All right, we're live now. Okay, so YouTube people, we're gonna talk. This is a different episode. We're gonna do part 2 today. So we'll be talking about Fast Times in Ridgemont High in a little bit. But Grace watched a movie and she wants to talk about it. So because we're gonna be at Toronto and
Like a
covering TIFF,
weirdo.
yeah, in
I
part 1.
guess so. I guess I'm so wrong. That's fine.
So this is gonna be a nice YouTube exclusive here. YouTube exclusive. All right, Grace, tell us about Bottoms.
I saw Bottoms, and I'm so glad that I did. I
Whose
was under
Bottoms
the.
did you see?
Wouldn't you like to know? So
Wow.
so many. I saw Bottoms. How lucky am I? I was under the impression that we would have a part 1, as we always do, and a part 2. And anytime we do a part 1 and I'm on the show, I try and think ahead to, hey, what would make this a great double feature? Whatever our main movie is, I'd like to try and watch a great companion piece. So our main film is Fast Times at Ridgemont High. It's a teen coming-of-age sex comedy. Well, guess what? I went out and I watched a teen coming-of-age sex comedy. Incredible. Bottoms. Emma Spiegelman's
Seligman?
Spiegelman.
I feel like this is vaguely anti-Semitic.
Yeah, I don't know about this.
I really don't mean for it to be. It's truly just
it's Emma Seligman, I think.
Seligman.
Yeah, Seligman.
Seligman. I looked up everyone's names and how to say them with confidence and abandon, and nice. I guess I did not practice them enough. So I will take that on the chin. I'm so sorry, Emma. I mispronounced your name. However, you are wonderful. Let me give you your flowers. Bottoms, a fun Gen Z coming of age movie for 2 teenage lesbian losers, PJ and Josie. These gals have got it in their mind to start a fight club with the ulterior motive for getting laid. Mm-hmm. This is such a high school movie. Everyone's trying to get laid. We're about to talk about a movie where sex is the only thing. Teenagers have sex. This takes it, runs with it. It's funny. It's interesting. And for what it's worth, it's actually not too sexed up. I've been hearing the term Puritans being tossed around when it comes to Gen X and their relationship to sex and film. They're nervous about it, hesitant about it. They don't want to see it. They wish it was just a couple seconds of kissing and then a cut to the next scene. So I've been seeing them referred to as Puritans. Teens, I believe is the correct.
Thank you for spelling it.
I was in the high school spelling bee. So I've been seeing that thrown around as a term for them. I mean, they always have something to say. Oh gosh, I wish this movie didn't have sex in it. I wish this movie didn't have sex in it. Well, this movie has sex in it, and sex is, the goal by the end of it. So it's fun to see, from, Fast Times at Ridgemont High to now Bottoms 2023. We're still thinking about the same thing as teenagers. But this, however, it was a nice 90-minute comedy romp through high school, through clubs, through homecoming, football games, and just trying to fit in. PJ and Josie are 2 lesbians at their high school. Not the only lesbians, but they're the only lesbians that are ugly, untalented losers. Because everybody knows if you're going to be gay, you need to be talented. Something like that sort of negates the fact that you like the same sex, at least in this world. It makes you a little more palatable to everyone. Like, hey, you've got something to offer. You're not just gay. This says, hey, world, I am gay and I have nothing to offer. and I'm gonna beat the shit out of my best friend in the hopes of getting laid. This whole movie is a fun, sort of, it's feminist, it's interesting, it's hilarious, and super, super enjoyable. Me and the 10 other people in the theater, we were laughing our asses off watching this.
Have you seen Shiva Baby?
I have not seen Shiva Baby. This is my introduction to Miss Emma, and I know that Shiva Baby was her like big thing. She's with her previous work with Rachel Sennett.
Yeah. It's that movie's like it's a comedy, but also like it's super intense because it's just like it's all like built around the Shiva that they're going to, and it like even though it like is funny, it's also deeply uncomfortable and like almost feels like a horror movie at times, just with like how like people are popping up with just more awkward situations to be a part of. And so I'm just wondering if that type of energy comes together in Bottoms.
I wouldn't say that there's any sort of horror or even thriller suspense aspect to it.
It's not a horror movie. It just feels that way because it's so awkward at times.
It's so awkward. I mean, like, yeah, this is awkward. This is teenage cringe. This is, young people trying to figure out who they are, but in their minds, they've already got it all figured out. Sure. We know how the world works. We're smarter than all the adults around us. We're so much more emotionally mature, sexually mature. We're having, very serious, intimate relationships, and we understand the gravity of that. They really don't. But I wouldn't say that this has any sort of horror element. There is some fun gore. Some really, really fun and enjoyable gore.
Would not have guessed. Oh, it's a fight club, I guess.
It's a fight club. So there's bloody noses, there's broken bones. But I would say that with every generation, there comes a fabulous teen girl coming of age story. There's Heathers, there's Jawbreakers, there's Mean Girls. We'll say maybe Booksmart. I don't know. Maybe we're a little divided on Booksmart.
I heard this one was like the kind of like anti-version of Booksmart.
Definitely, because there was such like a kind of, we're in Knoxville, scruffy behavior to it with the Fight Club. Booksmart is maybe a little more sanitized. And there's definitely like a genuine, earnestness that maybe we don't see. I was thinking about this with Booksmart. Maybe there's something kind of sanitized with Booksmart. This is gross and grungy and much more realistic. I'm not in high school right now. Andrew's the closest person that we have to high school.
Wow.
To a high school. Am I wrong?
I mean, I do work in a high school.
You work in a high school.
You make it sound like I just graduated high school or something.
Yeah,
we're so proud of you, Andrew.
We're so proud of you.
I've worked so hard.
You did. And you do kind of forget, I feel like, with this, like, God, they're just in high school. They're just like kids, and they're like trying to figure out what their emotional relationships are going to be. They're trying to figure out themselves. I mean, they're trying to create community that will sustain them through these last years of high school, a community, like a female community. And I think that though they didn't outright say it, like, we are a female identifying trans inclusive space. They said girls only. Take that as you will. This is very much a girl power movie. There's even a line where it's like, girls can do whatever guys can do, right? Right, they can, and we do. One thing that girls can do that guys can do is direct a hilarious teenage sex romp. So, and star in it. So thank you, Emma. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Ayo. Like, so grateful to you for making such a hilarious movie.
That's a perfect.
I think that anyone could really enjoy this. And 90 minutes, it's nothing. It's not even a fraction of your day. Enjoy yourself for 90 minutes. Let go. Let the story take you. This comedy subverts all sorts of tropes and stereotypes. girls can do anything boys can do, including get the shit kicked out of each other with the intent of getting laid.
Mm-hmm.
We're just as shallow as the boys.
And that's true.
That's true.
That's true feminism.
That's true feminism. There wasn't that sort of self-effacing that you mentioned from Barbie, as there was, and like this is just very like, take it at face value. That was nice.
And I still need to listen to y'all's Barbie talk. I need to get back and get caught up.
What the fuck was this?
That was a little Donald Duck noise.
I wish.
I like that you're also holding the mic like you're a news reporter.
I am.
Like, because like that last part of the review, it was like you were doing like like you were doing a spot. Like, we're here live at the scene where girls can do fight clubs, just like the men.
Do fight club, and it's hilarious.
Yeah. All right. Do you want to talk about another 90-minute high school teen comedy that's directed by a woman?
Yes, that's exactly what I wanted to do. That's why. Don't you see?
That's a great idea, by the way.
Thank you. It makes the most sense. Like, hey, if you enjoyed this, you might also like, if you loved Fast Times at Ridgemont High, please take yourself out, go see Bottoms, playing in theaters all across America. Enjoy yourself.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Have a laugh on us.
It's not on us. You're out to pay for yourself.
Yeah. What you
Cinematary reporting live. This is.
All right. Let's jump into Fast Time.
Recenter. Focus in.
All right. Here we go. In 3, 2, 1. And we're back with part 2 of episode 457 of Cinematary. In this part, we will be concluding our Young Critics Watch Old Movies series with 1982's Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Directed by Amy Heckerling from a script by Cameron Crowe, the film stars Sean Penn, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Judge Reinhold, Phoebe Cates, and Brian Backer. Stacey Hamilton is a pretty but inexperienced teen interested in dating. Given advice by her uninhibited friend Linda Barrett, Stacey gets trapped in a love triangle with a nice guy Mark Ratner and his more assured buddy Mike Damone. Meanwhile, Stacey's classmate Jeff Spicoli, who lives for surfing and being stoned, faces off against Mr. Hand, a strict teacher who has no time for the slacker's antics. The film is adapted from a book Cameron Crowe wrote after having spent a year at Claremont High School in San Diego, California. He went undercover to do research for his 1981 book, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, a true story, about his observations of the high school and the students that he befriended there, including then-student Andy Rathbone, on whom the character Mark Ratner was modeled. Universal executives recommended David Lynch as the director for the film, and Cameron Crowe met with Lynch. Though Lynch liked the idea, he passed on directing. What could have been? Producer Art Linson showed Crowe's script to Amy Heckerling, who at that point had directed only student films. Heckerling then met with Crowe, and the two began brainstorming different ideas for the film. Heckerling thought the book, quote, had just such an amazing wealth of material that could be incorporated more into the script. She liked how much the book's action is centered around a mall and suggested featuring the mall setting even more prominently in the film. Said Crowe, quote, Amy completely got it, and we were up and running. Nicolas Cage made his feature film debut portraying an unnamed co-worker of Brad's at All American Burger, credited as Nicholas Coppola. Tom Hanks was considered for the role of Brad Hamilton. Justine Bateman was offered the role of Linda Barrett, but she turned it down to star in Family Ties. Matthew Broderick was offered the role of Jeff Spicoli, but he turned it down. Jodie Foster was considered for the role of Stacey Hamilton. And Jennifer Jason Leigh, who ended up playing Stacey Hamilton, stated that she prepared for the role of Stacey by rereading her own high school diaries and letters, as well as taking a job at the Sherman Oaks Galleria Perry's Pizza restaurant for 3 weeks. Prior to the film's 1982 LA release, a news story reported that the July 5th, 1982 MPAA Bulletin had granted Fast Times at Ridgemont High an X rating due to a love scene between Lee's character Stacey Hamilton and Robert Romanus' Mike Damone, which featured full frontal male nudity, as the picture was, quote, the first major studio film in some time to be given an X rating. Universal agreed to edit the scene, allowing the MPAA to reissue the film as rated R. In the LAH exam, Lee explained that teenage test audiences had found the scene, quote, too graphic, and the actress expressed her disappointment that the recut version eliminated the sense of awkward hesitancy between the two characters who weren't, quote, ready for sex. Universal test screened an early cut of the film in Orange County, California. Heckerling said feedback from audiences in the studio was worrying because, quote, people were like, teenagers are not like that. You think all we care about is sex and drugs and blah, blah, blah. And we were worried that we would have to cut out a lot of stuff. However, producer Linson, who maintained that conservative audiences in Orange County were not the film's target audience, ensured that no major cuts or edits were done. Universal was not confident that the film would be a box office success and was considering shelving the movie. Crow said, quote, what happened is someone wrote a memo shortly before the release to Universal executives Ned Tinnen and Sid Sheinberg, that said the future of the studio was in doubt if we are making movies like this high school movie. Tinnen stood by releasing the film theatrically, and it was given a limited theatrical release. It was not given a big marketing push due to a lack of marquee names and concerns over its sexual content. Actor Judge Reinhold recalled, quote, we were really heartsick because somebody high up said this is pornography and there's no way that Universal's going to release it. We didn't see it as this horny high school movie at all. We saw it as having the opportunity to do something authentic that was based on the actual experiences of the kids that Cameron chronicled for that whole year. In 1982, the New York Times said, can there be anything about life in high school, particularly life in a suburban California high school, that the movie-going public hasn't already seen? Well, maybe there can. Maybe there can. A little bit of it turns up in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, a jumbled but appealing teenage comedy with something of a fresh perspective on the subject. And in 1982, Roger Ebert said, how could they do this to Jennifer Jason Leigh? How could they put such a fresh and cheerful person into such a scuzz pit of a movie? Don't they know they have a star on their hands? I didn't even know who Lee was when I walked into Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and yet I was completely won over by her. She contained so much life and light that she was a joy to behold. And then she and everybody else in this so-called comedy is invited to plunge into offensive vulgarity.
Wow.
Not a fan.
Doesn't sound like it.
So on that note, let's talk a little bit about Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and we'll consult our high school expert, Andrew.
Yes,
Swafford.
Andrew Swafford, our high school expert.
Yeah, I have taught high school in 1982, so I can tell
Yes,
you
exactly.
exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I have much of a like an insider take on it, but I would say that I like this movie quite a bit. And a word stuck out to me in your info sheet, Zach. I think it was in the Judge Reinhold quote where he was talking about like wanting to do something authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was the main thing that stuck out to me. Like this compared to the other Amy Heckerling movies I've seen, which are Clueless and Vamps. Those movies are so much more like high concept and elevated. And this movie just has such like a slice of life sort of ambitions to it. It doesn't really have a super clear protagonist. It's very mundane. We see characters hanging out at their day jobs and washing their cars and things like that. And even the like the sex scenes are kind of filmed with this sort of nonchalant matter-of-factness to it. And the whole movie doesn't seem to judge its characters for many of their actions. It's just kind of depicting what a quote-unquote normal high school life is like.
It feels almost like early like Linklater, like not even just Dazed and Confused, but like Slacker and things like that.
I do think that Dazed and Confused is the movie that comes most to mind for me when comparing to this. And I might like this a little bit more than Dazed and Confused, to be honest. I think that movie maybe has a better vibe and better needle drops to it. But this movie has really good characters, and it feels like it is more focused and purposeful than Dazed and Confused is. But I don't know. I could maybe go back and forth on those two. But yeah, my basic take is that I like this a lot. It was a lot of fun, as I hoped it would be.
Yeah. Grace?
Before I started watching this movie, I called up my dad and I said, "Hey, can you give me a Turner Classic Movies sort of preview for this?" And he gave me your info sheet verbatim. I guess you maybe talked to, I don't know. I'm just kidding.
We both have access to Wikipedia.
Right. So
He just pulled up Wikipedia as soon as you
maybe I
that.
think it was from the top of his head, because I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna watch this and then we'll talk about it. And he kept saying, "There's nothing for us to talk about."
Wow.
For this movie, and I was like, "What could you possibly mean?" And then I watched this movie and I said, "Yeah, okay, that makes sense." Yeah, I don't really want to talk about blowjobs, abortion, just casual sex as a teenager with him. He was right, but I was very surprised and genuinely and pleasantly surprised to find that this was at the heart of this movie. I mean, these are teenagers as young as 15 dealing with things as real as sex, getting pregnant, and abortions at their age in 1982. Like, it was kind of almost comforting that these things that our teenagers now are facing, things that we faced maybe as teenagers, teenagers have always been feeling this way. We have always felt smarter than all the adults around us. We've always felt more mature. We've always felt like we really understand the world. We can take it on ourselves and we don't need anyone. I especially enjoyed the tender moment. I mean, I say it's tender. There wasn't a whole lot of hand holding in that scene, but the moment where Brad has waited for Stacy to come out of the hospital following her abortion as a 15-year-old. Like, this is real. Like, this is what's happening. This isn't, a dramatization. Like, this is the facts. Like, there is definitely something authentic about that. If we're talking about authenticity, that's authentic. That's real. Him waiting for her and him saying, "Okay, you don't have to tell me. That can just be your secret." That was incredible. I mean, I don't know that I know a 15-year-old and an 18-year-old that are, as emotionally mature as such, but I'm sure that they're out there, and I'm sure that these are conversations that they're having. So, it's nice to see that represented in film. It felt very real. It cut right to the heart of the conversation. Hey, teenagers having sex. Teenagers are having sex unprotected. They don't really understand the full implications of that. And with that being said, I thought it was so interesting. Like, the emphasis put on sex is something that everybody's doing. You're supposed to have it. But then also, it's just as important when you don't have it, specifically Stacey and Mark's relationship. They haven't had it. That's just as important as the fact that she and Damone had it. If sex is this thing to be trivialized, everybody's doing it. Stacey's basically an old maid by the time she's 15 for not having it, when her friend Linda, her experienced and beautiful friend Linda, who has already had it at 13, she's engaged. She's got a fiance that...
Does she have a fiance?
She's got a fiance. He goes to another school.
Doesn't she write a breakup letter to him at one
she
point?
Does, and she's very, very mature in the breakup letter, but they decide to go with the one where she calls him an asshole, which was so cute. Like, she writes this very emotionally intelligent letter where she breaks up with her fiance, whoever this man may be. I don't know. In my mind, I'm listening to the letter and I'm like, "Oh, Stacy, maybe," or not Stacy, Linda, maybe you're kind of a stalker here with this older man, or, you've kind of fixated on this older man. Like, maybe there's a reason why he's not coming to your high school graduation. You're in high school. This isn't real. Maybe whatever you've made up in your mind with him, or maybe whatever, he's promised you isn't real and he's realized that. Maybe he's come to the conclusion, maybe you've come to the conclusion, but I love that she decides to go with the letter where she calls him an asshole. Because that's what adults do.
Yeah. And I, in my earlier take on the movie, I mentioned that it's kind of like loose and non-judgmental, but I think that it is very purposeful on Amy Heckerling's part to kind of center Jennifer Jason Leigh's character in the back half of the movie and not really shy away from the fact that like these very quote unquote normal, mundane interactions that these high schoolers have, they do have kind of a gendered component to them, right? Like Stacy has to bear the brunt of the way this relationship goes, whereas the guy who gets her pregnant just kind of gets to walk away. And the movie does not really pull any punches in like letting you see that guy is just an asshole. Like his just like getting up and zipping himself up and walking out like right after he has sex with her for like 2 seconds.
My mom's calling me.
Yeah.
What was that? What?
Oh, I'll be right there. But it does it twice. Where she feels like she's the one that's more interested in the boy. First with Mark, and then again with Damone. I mean, she is very upfront and forward about her intentions of I like you. Do you like me? And
are we a happy family?
Are we a happy family?
There's also the like 30-something-year-old guy that she goes out with.
26-year-old.
26-year-old guy. Yeah.
Are you sure you're 19? He asks at the baseball dugouts. Yeah.
They're at the point, Grace.
You're right. It's the point. Been there, done that as a father.
By the way, while we're talking about these scenes between Stacy and these dudes, one thing that I cannot abide in this movie is the recurring needle drop. She's gonna be somebody's baby tonight.
Yeah,
like,
I loved that.
You loved that?
I did. No, I love that. You say why you didn't like it. You tell, and then I'll say why I liked it.
I just think that a needle drop loses its power when you bring it back and specifically just like play the hook of the song. And like it felt so jarring and abrupt when it would cut in this moment that otherwise felt like it had a great amount of gravity to it. Like I was now laughing at the movie in a moment that should have been kind of emotionally serious, I thought.
Interesting. Well, I found it funny. She's somebody's baby. She's literally somebody's baby before she runs out with that 26-year-old. She's being tucked in by her mom.
True. Yeah.
So then it's like she's somebody's baby. She's her mother's baby. She is her mother's sweet, beautiful, darling daughter.
Yeah.
That she is tucking in, keeping the nightlight on, so the bed bugs don't bite or, what have you. But she's not that. She's ready to have sex. I mean, it's just sex at this point. She's an old maid. She's 15. All of her friends have already had it. So she's going to go be someone else's baby. I love that. And then, it becomes her theme.
So I think that's great until it becomes her theme. Like, that would work if it was just used once.
I mean, like right behind her when she's on the corner waiting, it says wasted youth, and it's like, that's for the dum-dums watching that like don't get what's happening, and you're like, okay, there it is, she's wasted youth. She's someone's baby, like we're spelling it out for you. But I like it when they keep using it. It's like, oh, yes, that's, Stacy's song has got it going on. I like to hear that. I admire
Stacy's having sex.
Yeah, I admire, if there's one thing Stacy's going to do.
It's be somebody's baby tonight.
It's be somebody's baby tonight. And like, who am I to blame? Well, it's also like, who are we to blame her when like, that's what she's told she's supposed to do. She's a gorgeous girl. She's
what she seems to want to do.
And she seems to want to do. She does seem to have some semblance of control. She brings the boys over to her house. Oh, you can come into my room. Oh, you can sit next to me. it seems like she's calling the shots, but only to a certain point, because then she kind of passes it over to the guy, and it's like, and here's your turn for, let me pass it to you for that slam dunk. And then Mark can't do it. Damone can barely do it. She certainly doesn't Damone during it. I mean,
Nice. Very nice.
That's good. I'll give you credit for that.
Thank you.
Um,
I'm the funniest panelist you guys have. I'll go
Yeah,
out
that's
on a
true.
limb.
yeah, I mean, Seth has probably some qualms with that, but we'll get back to
Okay.
that.
I can't compete with that. I know that. When he's
Yeah.
not here, I know I win.
It's it's kind of, this one's kind of an interesting, if you look at the broader kind of like high school teen movies that people like immediately go to. We've talked about Heathers.
Mhm.
We mentioned Amy Heckerling's other movie, Clueless. I think even more recently you have stuff. What's that?
Favorite. I love Clueless. I could talk about Clueless all day.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
You have like more modern stuff like Mean Girls. This one though, I feel
And
like,
Bottoms.
and I guess Bottoms now. But this one, I feel like it's popular, but I don't know. It doesn't feel necessarily as like name checked as a lot of other ones. Especially you think about like Amy Heckerling's movies between this one and, like Andrew mentioned before, Clueless and Vamps. The one thing I was thinking about with this was like comparing these 80s teen high school movies to like John Hughes, which definitely has like
Mhm.
that like affection that people, a lot of people have an affection for. And it's funny that like Matthew Broderick turned down the Spicoli role because he, goes on and has like this very like ubiquitous role with Ferris Bueller. But I kind of, John Hughes movies, I like a couple of them, and they definitely go for this authenticity. But to me, it almost felt like this one, like this movie, and some of the others that she's had, like feel much more like genuine in their authenticity than like a John, like, something like The Breakfast Club or 16 Candles, or even Ferris Bueller. Like there seems something. I kind of like like we were talking about before, Andrew, like that it's just. It just kind of rolls through stuff. There's like a plot, but it's a relatively plotless movie.
Yeah.
I like that the characters aren't always like at each other's houses or do like that they have jobs. Like, like
Mhm.
Brad for about 90% of the movie is just working. And so I was just kind of thinking about like how this portrays high school life compared to like a 16 candles or something like that.
And it spends time with characters who are not integral to the plot, as it were, right? Like Sean Penn's character is completely unrelated to like Stacy's love triangle, or however you want to like draw that. But we're just kind of jumping from experience to experience, and it does have that kind of I do understand like that this novel is kind of based on Cameron Crowe's own just observations in a real high school. Like feels just like stitched together of a lot of little moments like that.
Definitely. Some of these movies, they feel very like gender specific. I feel like this does a really great job of, we've got the stoner boy and then like the popular boy and then girl, just one girl experience. Clueless is very much girl experience. Ferris Bueller's Day Off, it's Ferris Bueller's experience. He transcends gender. So maybe this does a little more to get both sides of the high school experience, the boy experience, the girl experience, and is much more authentic with that. I think.
Zach, do you know anything about the novel that Cameron Crowe wrote? Like,
what a fantastic!
I would imagine that does not have Stacy as the main character, but I don't know.
No, I don't know. I've never read it, and there wasn't too much information about it, like in the info about the movie. It just said that he wrote this book.
I was like, oh my gosh, the almost famous guy. Like,
The one thing I want to
cool.
before we jump over there, the one thing I do want to talk about, to Grace's point about like how it handles gender. It also I found it also more fascinating than a lot of the high school comedies because it also like how it deals with class. Like you think of like Mean Girls and Clueless, like those are like upper class people, like that's
Definitely.
like they're at so and so's house. It's really nice. The mom is usually at home.
Mhm.
You kind of like have that. Like I like again like this one. Most like almost half the movie they're like at their jobs. It's not just like Brad, like Stacy's at her job. Linda had like Stacy and Linda have jobs. Mike has a job. Like
Did
everybody's
you see
working.
that high school though? That like big glass like front of that high school. This is definitely an affluent community.
It is, but like it's not.
Stacy has a pool, or no, Stacy Spring has a pool.
Well,
sure,
they're definitely like
them in like the working class and like their
they're definitely middle class. Yeah,
middle class. It feels, I mean, did you guys work in high school? I did.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's kind of it's like an interesting. You don't see. I feel like you don't see as much like middle class, well, just in general anymore, but also just like it's. I think that it's kind of nice to like have that. Where they're probably well off. Like Stacy and Brad's family's probably pretty well off. They have a pool, like they have a nice house. He has this nice car, things like that. But at the same time, like it's not like it's not like something where they're just like dicking around the entire time. Like they're usually like they're dicking around, but they're like working and like at places and like
which gives them that like air of maturity. Like I have a job, I work I work hours. Like I'm mature. I know how to be an adult in this world. And it's like, no, you don't. You really don't. I mean, I know that at 15, 16, I knew more than my parents ever could. And now I'm 27 and suddenly that's not the case.
That's another thing in this movie. You don't see like not that you need to see a bunch of adults, but you just don't see many adults. Mr. Hand is probably the most prominent one because again, he's kind of auxiliary with Spicoli, but yeah, you don't see a lot of adults like in this movie that much.
By the way, I may be biased here, but Mr. Hand, amazing character, just hysterical presence.
Yeah, buddy, old buddy boy from the apartment.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I didn't know that.
He's wonderful. I like that he, rises to every Spicoli antic. I mean, he needs
my favorite Spicoli line is when he walks.
Outdo the doer.
My favorite Spicoli line is when he walks in the classroom for the first time and he's like talking to Mr. and he like just like points at somebody. He's like, I know that guy. That's just like a whole personality. He's just like looking at it. He's like, yeah, I know that guy.
Sean Penn does an amazing job in this movie as that character, and like it's a bummer that he does not get more of a chance to play a goofball in his his like I don't know his career more broadly.
All right, Hamilton. Did you find anything? Did you? I wasn't sure if you were looking up anything on Cameron Crowe's book.
There's really not a ton of information out there about it. I found a Goodreads site, and that was about it. Doesn't have a Wikipedia page or anything like that.
I wonder, was it a book or was it like was it something he wrote for like Rolling Stone? I wonder.
It was a book.
Yeah, it was a book. It said adapted by, or adapted from.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, Grace, you talked a little bit about this. Won't mean anything it'll just direct people to our YouTube. It won't mean anything to the audio listeners, but you talked a little bit about Bottoms that just came out recently, and on our YouTube video. So like you still have high school comedies definitely coming out today. I mean, we've talked from like Edge of 17 to we've talked about To All the Boys I've Loved Before. You mentioned Bottom. Like you still have that genre still like happening. What do we feel like? I mean, I think that for the most part you have the there's kind of a baseline, a foundation in all of them that you kind of cover within these movies. But like kind of watching this, what did anything stand out like watching this movie, which is, a well-known high school comedy from the 80s, that, we see or don't see in like our high school comedies that are coming out now?
I think that there is one thing that I noticed was definitely locker culture. There's scenes where you get to know the characters by what the insides of their lockers say,
Right.
and then there's also a scene where Damone's locker says something derogatory about him. So as uniform as the lockers are, we can deface them so that we're able to single people out, and then also the inside of them lets us know who the student really is. In Bottoms, we see that lockers are labeled, they're defaced to reflect who the locker owner is. So that like hallway culture, locker culture, that's present. Then there's also the emphasis on sports, extracurriculars. In Fast Times, the cheerleaders are kind of losers. Everybody's making fun of them. They have to have a pep rally to tell, hey, be nice to us. We're cheerleaders. It takes a lot of guts to be us. Meanwhile, in Bottoms, the cheerleaders are just pretty girls auxiliary to the barbarianism that is high school football. They're objects, there's something to look at. When the girls do the pep rally in Bottoms, the cheerleaders are wearing a white shirt and a white pleated skirt, but there's no like school logo. It's just a white t-shirt to do a wet t-shirt with. So then it sexualizes the cheerleaders in a way that like we're kind of already doing, maybe. Speaking as a cheerleader, I've been a cheerleader before, and I come from a cheerleader experience.
Speaking of like sexualizing these characters, what are your thoughts on the amount of nudity in this movie? Because that was something that I think is a big difference from the way that teen movies tend to be made
Huge
today.
Difference. I completely agree, because it was halfway through Fast Times at Ridgemont, because I watched Fast Times at Ridgemont in Bottoms in the same day that when I saw the first bit of teenage high school nudity in Fast Times, I was like, holy shit, I didn't see any of that in Bottoms.
Well, that's like one of the, I mean, like the famous scene from this is the fantasy of Linda coming out of the pool and like opening up her bathing. So like that's like the famous scene from this movie.
That's parodied in Christmas Vacation with Chevy Chase, right? Like I seeing that versus seeing it in Bottoms. I said in our YouTube, the Gen Zs or Gen X or Gen Zs, Puritans, they don't want that sex, they don't want that sexualization. There's always some sort of nuance or conversation to be had around nudity that they feel like they are mature enough to engage in, and maybe this is like a larger conversation for like emotional maturity when it comes to films or anything like that. But like filmic sex, they're like, no, wrong, bad, no nudity. And they didn't have it in Bottoms, but they still got their point across.
We don't have it in a lot of like teen movies nowadays.
You really don't. It's kissing.
Yeah, it's kissing, or maybe like it's sex, but like they're heavily covered, like under some blankets, or
It's the after. We know what they did before, which I mean, maybe they're just like rewriting the Hays Code, like. Like you just close the door.
Well,
you know what?
In a way, we are to a degree with a lot of movies these days. But no, I agree. Like it is like there are not just like, I mean, like to the point, the Linda opening up her bathing suit, like that's like Phoebe Cates is like forever known for like that. Like that's just like a very like landmark pop culture thing from this movie. but yeah, I mean, you also get, Stacy is topless a number of times, from when she has sex both times. Linda's bathing suit's off. I mean, I guess Mike was completely nude that they had, and they had to cut it out where they had, full frontal nudity. I mean, yeah, it's I definitely couldn't see that playing in especially in movies now, just because we to a degree we are like kind of skittish about sex in general when it comes to movies. There's constantly a online discourse whenever a penis or a boob shows up in a movie.
I think this is it's kind of a particularly tricky case though, right? Like it's true that our movies now are blockbusters and otherwise are just kind of like artificially sexless. But and also, sex is such a huge part of adolescence, like the discovery of sex and like the seeking out of sex. But in depicting actual minors doing it, even if the actors themselves are, of age, you are kind of like inviting the audience to think about and sexualize, objectify teenage bodies on screen, like imagine teenage bodies on screen. And there is something like scuzzy and gross about that. And I think that like this movie is trying to depict teenage life as authentically as possible. And so like part of the way they're doing that is like just being honest about the fact that sex involves nudity. And so here's the nudity as these characters are experiencing sex. But I do understand why modern teen movies are maybe a little bit more restrained in, what they actually show the audience.
Yeah, but I at the same time though, I feel like they've become so restrained to the point that like it does limit that curiosity factor. Like I'm thinking about like we talked about To All the Boys I've Loved Before. And granted, we just watched the first one for our series, but like that's a super for like a not that there need to be like this giant sexual component, but it's a very sexless movie. Like there's kissing, but that's about it. I don't know about like movies like The Kissing Booth and other things like that, but like it just feels very, I don't know. I feel like you don't have to necessarily like go as far as a movie like this, but at the same time to deny that that's not something that's like being engaged with on some level for teenagers that age just seems kind of like missing a giant part of what's going on.
Sure. Yeah.
I especially like that they took it a step further and they like showed the very real consequences of sex. I think that Stacey's abortion treated with the utmost respect and sincerity. That this is a very real component of sometimes if you have sex unprotected as a teenager and you don't know better, this is the reality of what could happen to you. I think that she handles it so well, so normal, that it was so refreshing, a little jarring of like, whoa, this 15-year-old like freshman sophomore girl is about to go take herself for her own abortion, and then to like see how things have changed. Like that's another thing with sex, I feel like, in these teen movies is like they have sex and there's no consequences from having sex beyond the fact you slept with my boyfriend in this movie or you cheated on this. Those consequences, not the like, this is what actually like comes from the act. Like they approached that and treated it with such, I mean, our word of the night is authenticity. I think with such authenticity and earnestness that it really, for me, it like definitely endeared Stacy to me and Brad, but it also made me look at them as like, wow, like maybe you guys are as mature as you think you are. I mean, you're doing this on your own. You're doing what's 100% right for you. You are 15. You are in high school. You had a crush on your boyfriend, not boyfriend's best friend. And, if sex is this thing that everybody's doing and it doesn't mean anything, you had it, but like the real consequences that everybody experiences, you're taking care of it as appropriately as your situation dictates.
Right.
So this really gave like a lot of autonomy to these teenagers in a way that I don't really see, or please correct me if I'm wrong, that I'm not really seeing in a lot of our teenagers in these teen movies are having to undergo. Is it because of like our nation's like, fear of the A word, abortion? I don't know. But I just loved seeing it. I was like, good for you, girl. Like, you go after that and get it.
Yeah, I mean, the movie is simultaneously like
snap. Like, she's done in an afternoon, and Brad wasn't waiting that long. Like, good for you. Like, loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like how the movie is. It's honest about the consequences of sex, but it also doesn't feel like a kind of polemic after-school special. Like, if you have sex, you will get pregnant and die.
And you will die.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it is like being very like generous and humanistic in the way it depicts its teenagers' like desire to have sex as like not a bad thing, and like you said, gives them agency in terms of what they can do if pregnancy is to occur. Though of course like that is more complicated now, and like abortion is kind of under attack on a national level politically. But I think that like the nuances of that generally are not explored in modern teen movies. I agree.
Thank you.
As we wrap up, any final thoughts on the movie, or it can be on young critics at large?
One thing that we have neglected to really dwell on is just how funny this movie is.
It is a very funny movie,
and I just wanted to like point out a couple of like small understated moments that made me laugh a lot. One is in the scene where Mike Damone is giving some like pickup artistry tips to his like hopeless romantic friend. He is sipping chocolate milk. An adult beverage. Also, the scene where Judge Reinholdt's character is rehearsing a breakup speech in his work bathroom with the words "big hairy pussy" graffitied across the mirror. Hilarious.
These kids, they get right to the heart of it.
I love the scene when Mark and Stacy are on their date and they go to this restaurant that has these enormous chairs, and they look like actual babies sitting in these chairs. And then they leave the second their waitress arrives with this like unnecessary Coke order that they placed. And like the movie does not like dwell upon it or like give it like a musical stinger or anything. It's just that's the end of the scene, and it's hilarious.
Yeah,
it is such a funny movie. I was cracking up the whole time. Like, what can you say? I mean, like, being a teenager is funny and awkward, and the joke is kind of always on you. Like,
yeah. It's not a part of the movie, but I kept laughing because I've been rewatching episodes of Arrested Development every time Judge Reinhold would show up and just be like, "I am Judge." If you remember when Job swipes the Judge
Mock
Reinhold
Trial
magazine.
with Judge Reinhold. Mock Trial with Jay Reinhold. Don't I know it? Judge Reinhold looked like an adult male.
He does.
Everybody else looks like a young teenager. I'm like, whose dad is this? Who are you? He looks. I'm like, definitely not the heartthrob. Give me Spicoli. Let me. I know what Sean Penn does as an adult. Let me see. Mm-hmm. Like, bring him back.
Yeah, I like that Spicoli's just there, like we talked about before. He has no real use in like the plot of the actual movie, but it's just there for some fun moments. Like I like that. I like his relationship. Not that there's really any relationship like with Brad, because Brad just is like, you can tell is like somewhat entertained by him.
Well,
'Cause
they meet for the first time in the last scene. Of the
No,
movie.
they meet the first time they meet is in the
You worked
beginning
at All
when he's at the burger
American
place.
Burger
Yeah, he has this. They take
Oh,
his
you're
shirt,
right. You're right.
and he's
Yeah.
like, no shirts,
8
no
months
shoes,
ago.
no dice.
I thought that was such
Live it,
a strange
learn it,
and
live it,
somewhat
love it.
funny ending for the movie to like end with these two characters who have the least amount to do with the plot,
Yeah.
seeing each other again in this completely unnecessary scene.
Yeah.
But like that's kind of the movie's MO. It's just like depicting these like somewhat seemingly unimportant moments as just part of life, right?
Yes, absolutely. I agreed because I thought that the movie was going to end with Stacy and Mark Rat,
Right.
like, making
Mark
eyes
Rat.
across the mall, like, yes, I see you. Our love affair is yet to come. Like, this is just the preamble. But then it cuts to Brad at Mighty Mart, and
Mhm.
I think it served. I thought it would at least served him as like a popular guy to put him back on top. Like you
Mhm.
can't keep a good Brad down, and he's back to who he was before.
Yeah.
This whole movie shows the passage of time through the changing of seasons at the mall, the changing of Brad's jobs, high school dance and all. And then by the end of it, Brad's already done his senior year. He's graduated. He's kind of a loser. He's working at Mighty Mart, but he's still Brad. Like he's
Who is Brad? Is Brad ever like, yeah, Brad?
You're George Michael.
Steve Holt.
Steve Holt.
Steve
Like
Holt.
he's
Yeah.
back on top. So I think it brought us back around to that. So there's like something sort of, cyclical in it.
That's what's really important here. Is that
Yeah,
Brad's
Brad
back
is
on
still
top.
number one. Do
Speaking
not
of
underestimate Brad.
you were talking about like seasons and time in this movie, and that was one thing that felt a little slippery to me about the movie. Like all of a sudden it's Christmas, and I'm like, oh,
Yes.
like this is the
Rated
span of
every-
an entire school year. That was not really clear. I think that a similar like structure is done a lot better in Greta Gerwig's Lady Bird. Which that has the benefit of like just focusing on one character, which helps I think kind of ground the movie temporally. But here, because we're like jumping around in plot lines so much, it's hard to tell that time is passing too. And also similarly, I probably could have done without the "Where Are They Now" credits montage at the end. They're not particularly funny. I also don't really want Stacy and Mark to get together. Like, I don't really see any reason for that romance to exist.
Who did you want Stacy to end up with?
I mean, somebody else later on down the line, I guess. It seems like this is her experience in high school, kind of experimenting with a handful of losers. But like, none of these people are her destiny, I don't think.
Thank you for believing in her.
I do believe in Stacy.
Anything to say to young critics? Keep watching these movies. It gets easier. All of the ones that are black and white and
Other
foreign.
than Sallow, but yeah.
Other than Sallow, it keeps getting easier. Thank you for keeping up with us. Thank you for taking an interest. Your research will be rewarded. It's important that you know these. It's just important to know these films because they came before everything else you'll ever watch, and they'll be referenced whether you realize it or not. So it's good to know. I mean, this series is so important. It's educational. It's continuing education for myself. I'm 27. I've been watching movies for 27 years. That's a long time. How long have you guys been watching movies?
I probably didn't start at age 1.
Yeah.
But
What? I don't
but we
believe
are getting, as we've said many times, we are getting to the age where it's getting harder to call the series Young Critics Watch Old
Young
Movies.
critics.
I had the idea that maybe we should call it Cranky Old Men Watch Old Movies.
Well,
next
that's gender exclusive, and
Oh.
no, thank you. So
That's so true.
Voted
So,
down.
Apologies.
cranky old people,
Cranky Old Men and Grace.
and Grace. But I'm not cranky. I am wide-eyed, I'm bright-eyed and bushy-tailed to just see anything that I haven't seen. I am young at heart. Aren't you, critics at home listening? It feels good, doesn't it, to be in on it all, on the history, on this thing that you're so passionate about. People years, decades before you have been asked the same questions. They've been passionate about the same things you've been passionate about. This is important. Continue to watch, continue to ask questions, continue to critique, criticize, analyze, internalize. Let these movies affect you. Let them take you over, and don't let go.
And I don't think I could say it better than that. But I do agree that like the Young Critics series has been like a process of continual education, right? We've done it for, what is this, the 7th year that we've done it, or 8th? I forget. But like every year, there's always big titles that we still haven't gotten around to not only making a podcast about, but we haven't gotten around to watching for me, you know, like,
Absolutely.
so it is if you want to know things about movies, if you want to learn about the history of film, it is kind of like a lifelong process, I think.
Yeah.
We're all young at heart. Just let these movies wash over you and affect you as they do. I mean, you know, the thing with art isn't so much how you interact with it, it's how it interacts with you. So watch Fast Times at Ridgemont High, watch Bottoms, watch Sallow, watch Miss 45, watch anything and let it move you. And then you are a critic when you voice, you know, how it, you know, in what direction it moved you. So series like these are worth their weight in gold. So thank you for letting me be a part of this. I'm so lucky. This is my 2nd Young Critics Watch series that I've been a part of. This is y'all's, what would you say, like 8th? You know, I hope you guys aren't bitter and jaded for it. I hope you are refreshed and revived.
We're bitter and jaded for other reasons.
I know that. Both. Gosh, that's the you know, bitter old biddies brigade here,
right.
but we're moved, and art speaks for itself, but you know, allow us to lend a voice to it. So
yeah, well,
we're
said.
Happy to have you, Grace.
Yeah,
thank you. I'm grateful to be here.
All right, we got to wrap up the episode though.
Do we? Okay, absolutely.
That'll wrap up this episode of Cinematary. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cinematary, on Twitter and Instagram, where we've been posting about our Toronto International Film Festival coverage, and on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/Cinematary, where you can find all the movies that we talked about in this episode. If you'd like to support the show, patreon.com/Cinematary will take, you know, from $1 to $5, whatever you'd like to do to support the show. We appreciate it. Thank you to our patrons, Cam, Candace Sisson, Ron Hayes, Teresa Marsati, and Tyler Chandler. So much. Thank you so much for supporting us. Our next series is going to be on films of David Cronenberg. So we'll have a full list of that. Yeah, we'll have.
I can't believe.
What's your favorite Cronenberg, Grace?
Raw.
Is that a
joke?
No, I'm not. That's the only Cronenberg I've seen.
I don't think
I loved it.
That is a Cronenberg movie.
Yeah, it's not a Cronenberg movie.
It's his first.
Isn't Shivers his first? I can't tell if you're trolling me right now.
I'm not. I'm being honest. All I am is.
Are you talking about the one with the cannibals?
where it's sexually transmitted. It follows sexually transmitted via
Yeah,
the porn star
you
Raw.
are thinking of Shivers, I think.
Oh, I am thinking of Shivers,
I
but
was
it's
like-
called Raw.
Oh, okay.
Raw.
All right. Well, we'll have that for October horror. So are you looking for
Or
the list of
September/October horror.
September, October horror?
Spooky
You know,
season.
the world's scary, so we'll just cover it in a couple months. Until then, thank you all for listening. We'll see you next episode.
Bye.
If Grace doesn't do like